debt, and I just could not see my way out of it. So I said, you know what? I just need to pack up and move. So I moved back here about 5 years ago and moved back home with my mom. And I said, you know what? I just got to restart. I had a landlord one time. He said, if you find yourself in the hole, you got to stop digging, right? So if you're already behind or you're underwater, you just got to find your way out and stop digging a bigger hole. So that's what I decided to do when I moved back. And that's how I got into the mortgage industry. So ultimately, my goal was to pay my debt off. So like consumer debt, right? Credit cards, personal loans, things like that. But then also save up to buy a house. I had rented so many different times. I would say in like 7 years, I had moved like 5 different apartments because it was always something going on. So I said, hey, next time I move, I want to buy a house and I want to save up enough so that way I don't have to go into more debt, with the loans, the rent a center and all of that stuff. I'm like, no, I want to be able to buy everything in cash. And that's exactly what I did. So I always say a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? So when you have a goal, you got to actually make sure you have a way to do that. So that's what I did the first year, paid off all my consumer debt. And the second and third year, I used that to save up and I bought my house in 2020. So I've been there for about 2 years. So overall, my goal is just to teach you guys some of the things that you need to know. So that way you don't end up in a situation where you got to restart, right? So many people are just swimming in debt. But if you can avoid that, you can actually start out and have a better life, right? And I love to travel. So that's one of the reasons why I did it, right? I've been to Italy, been to Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and I love to travel. So when you have discretionary income, you can do that, right? So that's the ultimate goal. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is the cash flow quadrant. Has anybody heard of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki? Anybody? Okay, awesome. So they talk about that there's 4 different ways that income is generated. So everybody knows about the first one, which is employee, right? You have a job, you go to work, you get paid. Okay, there's a second type of income, self-employed. It means you work for yourself, right? But you still have to be there to get paid, right? So you can control how much income you make because you can get more clients. Let's say you're a nail tech, you generate more business, but you still have to physically be there to make money. So that's called linear income, okay? The second side of it is residual income. So let's say you own a business, right? Let's say you own 3 or 4 barbershops. You don't physically have to be there. The income is still going to get generated, right? So that's residual income because you're not there, but the businesses are making money. Majority of the wealth is generated from that category, okay? And then the last one is called investor. So that means your money is actually making money. So let's say you invest in real estate or you invest in the stock market. Now your money is making money. You don't have to be there. You don't have to hire anybody. Your money is just going to keep making money. And that's where you got Warren Buffett, right? All these different rich, wealthy people. That's how they generate so much income. And the interesting part is they pay less taxes than people who work a job, right? If you're self-employed or you have a job, they're still paying less taxes because they get government incentives. Okay. Any questions on that so far? They because the government actually gives business owners incentives because they're either giving jobs, right, or they're creating things for the economy. So they're giving them a tax break, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't know is that even if you have a job, you can still have a side business and take advantage of tax laws, right? So, like I learned this after I moved to DC, but you can have a business on the side and still pay less in taxes because the government they want you to have, side businesses. It's like, it's something they incentivize you to do, right? So don't think you have to be one or the other. You can do both, right, on the side. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is inflation. That's one of the main things that prevents a lot of people from generating wealth. Does anybody know what inflation actually means? Correct.
It's initially to bring up, like, make more employment and like raise the economy and everything.
Yeah, so it actually is the cost of everything going up, but the purchasing power of your dollar decreases, right? So I got a couple examples, okay? Do you know Jordan, right? Jordans were released in 1985, okay, 37 years ago. Does anybody know, or can you guess, how much do you think Jordans cost when they actually came out? Yes.
Like $80.
You said $80? $60? Anybody else? 30? $20? Anybody else? Yes? They were actually 65, right? How much are Jordans today?
300.
A lot, right? And that was just 37 years ago. So they've tripled, almost, well, 3 times more, right? Triple from what they were before. Think about something as simple as a new car, right? Back in the 90s, which was about 30 years ago, how much do you think the average new car cost? Like the average new car, brand new car, 10,000? 10,000, anybody else? Y'all close. It was about 14, right? 14,000. 30 years later, how much do you think a new car is now? 60? You said 60. Anybody else?
40,000.
You're right, 40,000. So that means the price went from 14 to 40 in 30 years, right? So what do you think is going to happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years, right? Everything is going to continue to go up. So that means your income has to go up, right? So that way you can take advantage of that. Okay. Now, one of the biggest financial decisions most people are going to make in their lifetime, what do you think that is? Buying a house. Exactly. Houses in 1990. How much do you think the average home was? If you were to guess. 50? Anybody else? 90? Okay. 80? 40? It was actually about 150,000. That's the average in the U.S. Now, how much do you think the average home is now in the U.S.? Not just Detroit, obviously, right? 250? 250. Anybody else? It's actually 380. The average new home went from 150 to 380 in just 30 years. Okay, so that means obviously it's going to continue to go up, right? So I'm going to talk about when you are looking at a home and the different types. So you know how you can rent, right? You can rent a home, but you can also buy a house. So I'm going to talk about the differences between the two. So if you're renting a home, if something breaks, who pays for it? If you're renting, the landlord, right? You call the landlord, hey, the water pipe broke, you got to come fix it, right? What about when you move? Do you get anything out of it? Like, let's say your lease is up. Do you get anything back? Your security deposit. What else? Nothing. You get nothing out of it. So I have a story. The gentleman who actually gave us the flashcards, he told us a story about his mom. Okay, he said that she did when she's in her 50s, but since she was in her 20s, she just didn't want the financial responsibility of buying a house, right? So like repairs, things like that. So she decided just to rent. When she was in her 50s, well, around now, they went back and tried to calculate how much money she spent on renting over the course of 30 years. Can you guess how much that was? Over 30 years, she's only rented. She's never bought a house the entire time. Never bought a house.
Had to be more than actually buying a house.
It was definitely more than buying a house. $750,000
That's crazy.
on renting. right? You know how many houses she could have bought with that? A lot, right? That's wealth she could have created for her family, but instead she just threw it away renting. Okay, so not to say everybody needs to buy, but essentially buying a home is always going to be better in the long run than renting, because when you rent you don't get anything, right? But when you buy, obviously you are. So the difference with buying, of course, you need a down payment, right? So depending on how much the house costs determines how much you got to bring down. So, you know, if you buy a house for 200,000, you might need 10,000 at closing, things like that. You wouldn't need that if you're renting, because obviously for rent you just pay first and last month, right? Now, if something breaks in the house, who pays it? You. So, like when I bought my house, the first summer, the AC and the furnace was 40 years old, and they're like, you got to pay for it. So I had to pay $6,000 my first summer. I'm in there sweating, like I gotta, but I had to have that money saved. If you don't got it saved, you just figuring it out. You got to get a fan, whatever, So, and then also building equity. So like if you buy a house, it's, you bought it for 200,000, 10 years later, maybe it's worth 300,000. That means you got $100,000 that you profit. That's the capital gain we talked about earlier. You profit 100,000 just because value of homes are always going to go up, right? The only time they went down is like when the market crashed back in 2008. But essentially, real estate is always going to go up. So your ultimate goal is you want to own a house at some point. So you just got to make sure, obviously, you're saving up and things like that. Because you don't want to buy a house and be what they call house poor, where all you have is the house and you have nothing else. So you want to make sure you're financially prepared for that. Okay. And we talked about budgeting earlier, but the main thing when it comes to that is taxes. It's coming out 30% off the top. Okay. For most employees, if you got a job. So like if you're getting paid $1,000 a week, you only actually get $700 in your pocket, right? So you have to basically budget around taxes, because that money is coming off the top, unless you own a business, right? And you're writing stuff off, then you get some of that money back. But essentially, taxes is going to be your largest expense. You got the rent. We went over the budgeting earlier, so we don't have to do that all over again. But one of the main obstacles that I see in the banking industry is that a lot of people have a significant amount of credit card debt. Like working as a mortgage banker, I've had clients that got $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in credit cards. Like, how did we get here, right? And I'm like, well, what did you spend it on? They're like, oh, I was traveling, oh, I was shopping, and then you're like, okay, you spending more money on your credit cards a month than you paying for your mortgage. How did that happen? It's because, you think, oh, I'll just buy this, I'll pay it off. But you don't. And then you end up paying the minimum. And then the balance keeps going and going and going and going. And next thing you know, you got so much credit card debt, you can't pay it off. So the goal is, especially when you guys go to college or anything like that, they're going to try to get you to get a credit card. 100%. So you just have to be smart about it. And the only time I would recommend using it is if you can pay it back, right? Like if you got the money, use it. When the bill comes, you just pay it. Because if you let it sit there, it's going to continue to grow. He talked about the compound interest is going to continue to grow and grow. And next thing you know, you're paying the minimums and you can't get out of it. I see it almost every day. Okay. And then also, one good thing about credit is you ever heard of like cash rewards or mileage or points and stuff like that? So I have like an Amex card, right? So every time, I think I went to Puerto Rico and I didn't even have to pay for a flight because I used the points from my credit card. But the only reason that's good is because I don't pay interest. So if you don't pay interest, then use it because you're not losing money. Like if you buy something you think is on sale, but you let it sit on your credit card for 6 months, it wasn't on sale no more, right? Because you paid interest on it. So it only makes sense if you can pay it off in full each month. Okay. Make sense? Anybody got questions on that? I think we went over budget.
Wait, how, I'm a little confused about the interest. Like,
Uh-huh.
how do you not pay interest?
So to not pay interest, what you do is you swipe the card, right? Within the next, I would say 30 days, they're gonna send you a bill. And it's gonna say, this is your total amount due, but this is your minimum payment. So let's say you spend $100, your minimum is only 25. Okay? So if you pay the 25, that 75 rolls over to the next month. Remember he said something about revolving? It revolves, so it's gonna roll over to the next month. They're gonna charge you interest on the 75. But if you paid the whole 100, they can't charge you interest because you paid it by the due date, before the due date, right? So they're giving you at least 30 days to make this payment with no interest. The problem is people normally just pay the minimum and don't think about the interest. And then when you look at the bill, you're gonna see $100, $200. Like if you got a $10,000 credit card, you paying $500 a month in interest. That's a lot of money, right? But people don't think about, oh, I'll just pay the minimum. But you're losing money from that, right? The next thing we want to talk about is saving. So the main goal with saving is just to set a goal and make a plan. A lot of times people say, well, I have so many expenses, right? We went over the budget earlier. There's money in your account or in your like that you can make. You just got to open up your bank accounts and look at it and see where the money is going, right? So I look at something simple as going to get coffee. You go to get Starbucks 5 times a week. In 1 year, that's $1,300 just in coffee. Okay? Or you buying Jordans, right? You get 3 pair of Jordans a year. In 5 years, that's what, $3,000 in shoes, right? Most people are not reselling them. So you just gotta look at what expenses you have and what ways you can make a plan to save. So I mean, you can just open your bank account, look at it, and I would say set up an automatic payment. Like, let's say your goal is to save up $500, and you get paid every week. You set up an automatic payment, $25 every week. It goes to an online savings account, so you don't look at it, because if you look at it on your account, you're gonna be ready to spend it. Transfer from the savings account, right? What you want to do is put it somewhere where you can't look at it every day. And that's what I did to be able to save up the money to buy my house. Okay. So just, they got like online savings accounts you can get. It's really easy. So I put in here, if you save $125 every 2 weeks, that's about $3,200 saved in just 1 year. Right? Most people don't even have $500 in a savings account for emergencies. Like something happens, the car breaks down, you don't even have $500. So that means if you lose your job, we behind on the bills. What's happening, right? So you just got to think about every little thing you spend money on. Just try to put some away to yourself first, so that way you'll have money long term. And I put in here, if you invested $100 every 2 weeks at 8%, so like in the stock market, that's $40,000 in 10 years. Okay. So the younger you start investing, the better you're going to be long term, because you got so much time for the compound interest to continue to add up. Okay. In 30 years, it's about 300,000. Okay. And then I put in here, if you want to get to $1 million, $350 every 2 weeks at an 8% interest rate is actually $1 million in 30 years. So that means by the time you're retired, you got $1 billion sitting in your account. And you got people who don't even have 200,000, right? You would have $1 million. Okay. We talked about assets, right? Assets versus liabilities. Does everybody know what an asset is? Assets? Anybody? No? So an asset is something that actually makes you money. Okay? So, for example, if you got a rental property, or you got an investment account, or you have a retirement account, all those things that actually generate income for you every month, that's an asset. Okay? A liability. That's the opposite, exactly. So it's something that costs you money. Clothes, cars, stuff, right? Shoes, everything that you can't generate any income from.
Yeah, so like I just looked at like I was gonna tell you what asset was, but then you said it because we were playing like the little flashcard game.
Yeah,
You said that like capital gain was like buying the asset,
right.
investing what it's actually
For more, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, and I have a thing here. The difference between poor, middle class, and wealthy. What do you think the difference they buy? Like we talked about assets, liabilities, right? Poor people buy stuff. Okay. Middle class people buy liabilities. So they buy cars, right? The more money you make, oh, I gotta get a new car, or I gotta get this fancy clothes. But wealthy people buy assets. So they buy stuff that's gonna make them money. We buy stuff that's gonna cost us money. And that's the reason why the wealthy get wealthier, right? And the poor people get poorer because we're not buying anything that's generating any income. Okay. So one thing I wanted to say, closing out, is you want to educate yourself so that way you can prepare for financial freedom, right? So Rich Dad Poor Dad is one book I would definitely recommend. It talks about real estate. Think and Grow Rich. That's another book that's phenomenal to read as well. And just do your best. Stay positive. Pay yourself first. If you got a job, save $20 every time you get paid. Put it in an account and don't think about it, right? And have fun, right? If you want to travel, if you want to treat yourself, it feels a lot better to have financial or have money than to be struggling and trying to, pay bills every month. Because at some point, you're going to have to be on your own, right? So you want to make sure you're prepared. So that's all I have for you today. If you guys have any questions for me, I know it's a lot of information. So, all right.
What were the books that you recommended again?
Think and Grow Rich is one book, and then Rich Dad Poor Dad. Those are both phenomenal books to read. I mean, everything is in a book, right? So if you think about any topic you want to learn about, everything is in a book. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Let me. Y'all got any questions for Dominique? You already asked.
Yeah, they asked
Right.
throughout
Let me get
the other slide.
Cause his ain't under there. I'm gonna set up this next presentation. We rocking and rolling, y'all. So this is my big brother once again, y'all. This is my older brother. No, this is my older brother, y'all. We got the same name. We're a few years apart, long story. But it's my real brother. So my brother is a financial advisor at Andrew Jones. Very successful person, and I look up to him. When I was younger, I didn't look up to him. So, I came from a troubled background, and my brother made some great decisions in his life, and he is actually an inspiration. We are neighborhood kids, like, we're not people that's from the suburbs. I am from Southwest Detroit, you know what I mean? And I've had my trouble, been through everything, bro, and I'm trying to tell y'all, the best thing to do is get all this information now, use it now, make good decisions now, find good role models now. That's what Big Homies is all about. We'll talk a little bit about the Big Homies again before we leave. But here's my big brother, Alvin C. Hill III, y'all.
I don't know how I feel about him calling me big brother. It's obvious who's the biggest. Okay, so y'all can't laugh. I mean, it's true. He's bigger than me, so I would say he's my big brother. I just came first. How y'all doing? All right, I need somebody to lift it up. How y'all doing? All right. Yeah. I'm so proud of each and every one of you all because you all are here ready to learn something. And so far, what I've heard has been valuable information. even if you don't understand it all right now, a wise person used to tell me, or used to say, you'll catch it after a while. If you don't know it now, don't discard it, don't put it in the trash in your mind, but put it on the shelf. Because at some point in time in your life, it's going to be pertinent to you. And you're going to have to do what? Grab for it and pull it off the shelf and use it for yourself. So I encourage each and every one of you, if you don't understand or grasp everything that we're talking about today, do take the time and just put it on the shelf. Take good notes and then go back to it at some point in time because it's going to be valuable. I guarantee you that. It's interesting. When I started out in my career, before I started out, what really put me on the path of my career. So I'm a financial advisor. I work for a little small organization. I'm being facetious because it's not little and it's not small. We've been around for 100 years. I work for Edward Jones. I am a financial advisor, and I've been a financial advisor probably longer than most of you have been alive. 21, I'm going in my 22nd year of being a financial advisor. But what put me on that journey was when I was about your age, I started to do some tallying. My mom was an artist, and she used to have a lot of construction paper in the house. And I used to steal her. I don't like to use the word steal, but I'll take some of her construction paper and I'll cut up the construction paper and make money, paper money. Camille, you might remember this, but I used to make paper money. That's my sister, and I would count it. So I had stacks of my own paper money, and that's how I learned how to count money. So, but what put me on the path of my career was I realized that the subject of finance was never being discussed in our community. When I got a job, I was able to get a little bit of money. I saved up and I wanted to start investing. And I called an investment company and I had about $1,000. And I asked, how can I start investing? He asked me how much money I had. And they said, that's not enough. And basically discouraged me. So that made me upset. I was about 18, 19. So I said, well, you know what? I'll learn it myself. And that's what put me on the path, the career path. So I went to school and my undergrad study, I studied finance, became a financial advisor or maybe vice versa. And I've been helping people with achieving their financial goals. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about investing. Heard him talk about credit. I heard him talking about interest, inflation. So this is going to be a lot of good information. Right now, I have some sheets I want you all, my sister's going to pass out. And I want you to take a moment. How many of you are familiar with, I'm going to say this. When you woke up this morning, did anybody cut on the lights in your bedroom? You didn't? Okay. Last night, did anybody watch TV? Okay. Did you use the internet in your house? Did y'all eat anything? You did? You did? You ate something? Well, guess what? Everything that you did, from turning on the lights, cutting on the internet, or watching TV, 9 times out of 10, there's a company, well, not 9 times, a company is providing that service or product to you. And guess what? You can own part of that company. Did you know that? Oh, you knew that. Oh, y'all so smart. Y'all smart. So what I got coming to you right now, these are pretty much popular companies. So on this sheet, what I want you to do is take a minute. I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds. I want you to take
and see if you can match the stock symbol to the company. So see if you can match the stock symbol to the company. And I want you to do that independently, no working in teams. Oh yeah, see, I see father and son combo. All right. If y'all want to work in teams, I'll let y'all work in teams. Y'all got y'all team? You ready? So match the company, and then we're gonna. I should have brought a door prize to make it interesting. Anybody got some money y'all want to throw in for a door prize? You got? All right. Oh. Okay. I guess there's a door prize. All right. Well, I can pay you back.
No. No, we just I mean, so we're oh, where?
I'm gonna walk around and see how we come along. Alphabet. Anybody know what that is? Alphabet? What company? Okay, you better too much.
Sorry about that.
Have anybody know what Harley Davidson is?
Motorcycle.
Oh, you know, okay, that's I don't know about this company. McDonald's. Oh, okay. I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes. Now, no, one more minute. You haven't got that many minutes. Okay, cool. And my minute might not be an exact minute. It's gonna be a proverbial minute. So it might be 30 seconds. All right. Are we done?
No.
All right, I'm gonna go down the list. Now, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna find out how many got right before? Let's see. Okay, we just have to. I'm gonna have to go on the honor system. So somebody already gave out the first one. Alphabet is what? Oh no, you fine. You good. Alphabet is the very first one. And what? Anybody got an answer to that? Google. What about Apple? What's that symbol? AAP. Yep, AAPL. What about AT&T? Who said T? T. Oh, you probably work for AT&T. That's Bill coming from it or something. Coca-Cola. This might be a tricky one. Oh, right on. Coca-Cola. Anybody know what Eli Lilly is? What you say? You got it. Eli Lilly is a they supply, they're legal drug dealers. Let's call it like that. So what about Exxon Mobil? What is it? You got it. Ford. Yeah, that's it. Everybody in Detroit should know that one. General Mills.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it?
GIS.
How about Harley Davidson? What?
What about HOG?
HOG. Hall. Motorcycle. Vroom, vroom. Yeah. Now, Home Depot. HD. McDonald's. Yeah, y'all. Some of y'all ready to go to McDonald's. Let's get some MCD. Yeah, call it by the symbol. What about Microsoft? Oh, y'all got it. Procter and Gamble. PG. Nobody gonna get this one. I'm pretty sure. Southwest Airlines. I think you smart. You smart. LUV. Yeah, I don't love that Southwest Airlines. That's another story. Target. All right. Verizon. You got it. VZ. Then Visa got to be what? And then Walt Disney.
Yes.
I say all y'all need to be at the DIS.
You forgot
So
Walmart.
what I forget?
Walmart.
Oh, cause I don't go to Walmart. What is Walmart? So now when y'all go places, y'all just call it by the symbol. Hey, I want to go to TBT. And somebody look at you like, what? It's Target, man. Come on. You just learned a whole new language. All right, so these are all companies, these are examples of companies that you can own. So not just shop there or utilize a product or service that they offer. We get so caught up on consumerism, being the consumer, because guess what? All of these companies, they're buying for your dollar. But guess what? You could turn around and get their dollar. So one of the things I heard some terms being thrown out today that I'm going to actually use again. One of the terms we used, or they talked about, was goal setting. Setting goals. Now, we earlier talked about setting goals as personal goals. But in your own personal life, you're going to be looking at achieving goals, maybe to buy a car. I heard talking about buying a house, buying a car, having established credit. All of that's important. And those are setting goals. So beyond having good credit, you want to make sure you have the money put aside for it, right? We also talked about inflation. We talked about, was another good word I heard. It'll come back to me. But these goals, we set them up in such a way where we have to make them obtainable. But most of these goals need money to go towards them. So that's where investing comes in. And this is the part where investing is so important when we also think about inflation and how it is impacting what our dollar is able to do. So how I help my clients, basically, when they come in to see me, the first thing I have to understand for them, each person, is what's important to them. What is their goal? They help me help them by understanding their goal, number one. And then from there, I just don't randomly select investments to help them achieve their goal. I have to be very careful to understand how comfortable are they with their money going up and down, because that's what investments oftentimes do. They don't just go up, they fluctuate up and down. So when you own a company, the price of it is going to change. So we're going to talk a little bit about owning stock, owning bonds. So I'll pause here. Anybody can tell me what a stock is. I'm willing to accept any answer. All right.
You kind of just explained it, but in my own words, a stock is something that you basically put into. it'll go, like you said, it'll go up, it'll go down, you put in a certain amount, let's say in like 10 years, you'll have double or triple what you put in the first place.
That is a good answer. I'll give you an A- on that. That's great. Anybody else?
Having ownership in like a company.
Okay, so I'm not gonna do you right now, but you're right. You're right. But if we sum that up in one word,
It's gonna be ownership.
so. Stocks. So, one word definition I like to use for stocks is exactly what the young lady back there said, and that is ownership. You were right in the wheelhouse. So, a stock is nothing more than you owning a part of a company. So when you own a company, let's call it AT&T, you have the opportunity to participate in the profits and or losses of that company. So I'm very clear in saying profits and or losses, because stocks just don't go up in an ascending line. They fluctuate, they go up and down. So when you own that company, you have the opportunity to see that company go up in price. So most often, when you buy a company, you buy it at a certain price. Every one of those companies on those sheets, you could look at it on their phone, pull up the ticker symbol, and see what a stock price. In fact, I want someone, you have a phone? Anybody have a phone? Choose one of those symbols and see, Google it or go to your, I know if you have an Apple, you have a stock app, and you can type in the symbol. And Apple will actually already show you what the last stock symbol was. So, and we'll play a game. Anybody got one?
Visa.
Say that.
Visa.
Who got it?
Visa.
And what does Visa got?
Is at 224.
224?
Yes, 224.
All right. So we know that's Visa. $224 a share. You know what that means? That $224 means for one share, it costs $224 for one share. So if you wanted 100 shares, how much would that be?
$22,400 shares.
I'm at
$22,400 shares.
That'll be times 100. So you said, damn. Oh yeah. So, the objective here is, even though you start here, you really want that number to do what? As an owner? Increase. I want you all to talk to me. That's the objective here. That might not always happen like this. That's an ascending line. Generally, it happens more like, and we getting happy, right? And then go, ooh.
Didn't know what happened in the world.
That's what we see. That's owning stock. So you participating in the what? Wait a minute. I use a very clear terminology.
Ownership.
No, I said you're participating in the profits and or, that's right, in owning stock. But there are different types of companies. So I'm using Verizon as a company, and all those names on there, we like to call them larger companies. So companies come in various sizes. So, honey, you say you want to you're starting a company, right? A clothing business. So at the level that you start, would you be a large company right now? You'll be a small company, right? So companies come in various sizes. There are large companies like what you're looking at on your sheet. So I would like to categorize that as, we call that large, but they call it capitalization. Large cap means a large company. Then you might have a company that's medium size, which we'll call mid cap. Then we have another company size we call small cap. But then that's, let's say if you just buy a company here in the US, but then there are companies all across the globe. And know what we call them? International. So you can invest in companies that's in the US based upon their size. You can invest in a company that's across the globe. And based upon these sizes, depends on how they're going to perform at different times in the market. And also, the sizes determine the level of risk that you're taking. So let's talk about risk. Did they talk anything about risk today? So every investment, if it's in cash, if you put money in the bank and leave it there, there's a risk. If you invest it in the market, in the stock market, there's risk. What is risk? The potential that your money fluctuates, right? Up and down. That's risk. So essentially, when we're looking at investing, we have to understand, I talked about earlier, we have to understand, one, what is our goal? Our goal in why we are investing. We have to have a why. So many people that I work with, and a lot of your parents, I guarantee you they're probably working to, they got a common why. You know what that common why is? They want to retire one day. So they're working towards a goal towards retirement. Some of you are going to, you have that goal too, but you don't know it just yet. But one day you're going to say, all right, I'm ready to stop working, but are you prepared financially to stop? So if that's your why, we set up an investment strategy to help you achieve that goal. Let's call it retirement. Or you might have a goal to, I don't know, buy a car or buy a house. That's the goal. The next thing we have to understand, that's the goal or investment objective, we'll call it. The next thing we have to understand is the risk, how you feel about your money fluctuating. So your money doesn't have to fluctuate at the same level, the risk that you're taking. You may not want to take the same level of risk. So understanding how comfortable you are with your money going up and down. How comfortable are you? So that's understanding your risk. That's point number 2. Point number 3 is now understanding the time frame in which we want to achieve that goal. So there's 3 things that you have to understand, and I have to understand as a financial advisor for my client, is the goal, the investment. Well, the goal is the investment objective, the why. 2, the risk that you want to take of seeing your money going up and down. 3, the time frame in which you want to invest. Once we have a clear understanding of that, then I can put a plan together and we can talk about that plan and how we want to invest that money. Because guess what? Visa might be too risky for you. Or investing in a portfolio that's all stocks may be too risky for you. So there's another alternative of investing. And that's called bonds. Have anybody heard that term before? Nobody? Okay, I got stone face. Anybody? I know this subject is boring, but you're gonna love it one day. You're gonna love this subject one day. What you say bonds were?
Like savings? Like savings?
That's a type of a bond, but you're right in the house. You're right in the house. If I ask for a one-word definition, can anybody give it to me? A bond? All right, I'll give it to you. A bond is nothing more than a loan. If you don't get nothing else what I just said today, I want you to understand stocks is what? A bond is nothing more than a what? All right, so, and don't be shocked by you not knowing that. Most of the clients I talk to don't know what a bond is. And I'm talking about doctors, lawyers that I work with, other type of professionals. They can't tell me what a bond is or how it actually works. So don't be surprised by that. A bond is nothing more than a loan. And why is it nothing more than a loan? So y'all talked about, I heard y'all talking about buying a house. And you might need to borrow money to buy a house or buy a car. And you need your credit up, right? Remember that conversation I was talking about earlier? Now I want you to hold on to that. Because that's putting you in the seat of a borrower. You're borrowing the money from the bank. So you got to have good credit to get the loan. If you don't got good credit or don't have good credit, if you don't have good credit or the best credit, you're going to pay a higher interest rate, right? I heard my man talk about he had to pay a higher interest rate on his car loan. So when you borrow money, you're borrowing from the bank. They're looking at your credit and how much of a credit risk you are to them. Well, a bond is nothing more than a loan. Guess what? The tables are turning because every company, every institution, when I say institution, a government institution like the U.S. government, you say U.S. government bonds. Every city, we call those municipalities. They all want to borrow money from you. Did you know that? Because they have bills they got to pay. Every company, the reason why they issue stock, because they need your money so that they can put out a product. They need your money. They have to have it. So a company is looking at, okay, are we going to issue part of our company and give them shares of our company, allow them to participate in the profits and losses? That's ownership. Okay, they don't want to issue too much ownership because they'll give away the company. They can't do that. So the next thing they do, let's take a loan out. Let's issue bonds. So the next time you go to the bank, you're not there to borrow money. You're there to
issue bonds? Do you want to invest in me? That's all you're doing, really. That's how you really got to think about it. I'm issuing a bond. So he caught it. Nobody else did. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. So a bond. Remember, I said it's nothing more than a loan. And it's like flipping the tables. So now these institutions want to borrow money from you. So who want to borrow money from you? I said it. The U.S. government, corporations, all those corporations on that sheet, they want to borrow money from you. City of Detroit want to borrow money from you, or whatever city you live in. That could be, or the state of Michigan want to borrow money from us. States, cities, all want to borrow money from us. But different from stocks, a bond offer us something. A stock offer us the opportunity. We talked about this. The price, we want this price, if we bought Verizon, to go from 224, hopefully it goes to 250. We call that capital appreciation. The difference here, the amount that you paid and the amount that it reaches, we call that capital appreciation. So we know we want the stock to go up in price to achieve a capital appreciation. One minor thing I failed to mention about stocks, some companies, because you want the stock price to go up, but there's a second way to earn money with the company. What you say?
The dividend.
Speak up.
Dividend.
What? Dividends. That's almost like free money. Because a dividend is what the company is going to pay you out of their earnings. So when they earn money and they've paid all their bills, and at the end of the year they have a profit, they call it earnings, then they'll say, let's pay it out to some of our shareholders or all of our shareholders. So they'll issue a dividend. Not all companies pay dividends, but there are specific companies that pay dividends. So the second part of a stock, two ways of growth with the stock is capital appreciation. I'm gonna abbreviate because I can't spell that well. Anyway, that was a joke. You're not paying attention. The second one is dividends. I'm gonna abbreviate also here because. All right, I'm gonna spell it out. Dividends. I really can't spell. So that's a two-way. Now dividends aren't guaranteed. That's if they declare them. The company says, hey, we want to pay this out. That's one way. Now bonds, how do we make money with a bond? Remember I said it's a loan. So if you borrow money from the bank, you got to pay interest, right? We talked about that, right? That interest, let's call it 5%. You paying them 5%. And when you take out a loan or the company borrow money from you, they're going to pay you that 5%. And that 5% is kind of the guarantee. Unlike stocks, this is not a guarantee. But on the bond, they owe you that. They owe you that 5%. So they borrow, let's call it $1,000. And that they'll issue the bond for a time frame. That time frame can go from 2 years to 30 years. It all depends on what you want to, how long you want to put it aside for. So let's say that bond, you do a 5-year bond, but before I go there, before you even say, I want to lend you the money, what's the very first thing you want to look at that company? You want to see if they're a good credit risk, right? Like they're going to find out if you're a good credit risk because you got a what? A credit score, right? Every institution has a credit rating. And so you can find out if they're a good credit risk or a bad credit risk. Personally, our credit risk is ran by the number system, right? 300 to 800 or whatever, good credit down here, 800, you super good. Well, AAA,
They run off the letter system. Triple A and triple B for a corporation or institution, that's good credit. We call this investment grade. Double B and below, we call this, we could call it low quality, but I like to put it simple. Also, it's called junk. Have you ever heard the terminology junk bonds? That's where junk bonds live. Now the difference is, just like you and I, if we take out a loan and if we got good credit, we pay a lower interest rate. If you got bad credit, you got to pay a higher interest rate. The same thing here. If you take out or if you lend your money and you want your money to come back to you, 9 times out of 10, this is the safety zone. This is probably where you're going to get your money back. Down here, they might default on you. They might not be able to pay you. So you're taking on a little bit more risk here, but they're going to pay you more interest here because they got to pay you for the risk that you're taking. Question.
What if they weren't to pay you back?
Speak up.
Like, what would happen to them if they didn't pay you back?
That's an excellent question. If they didn't pay you back, then you essentially lose money. There is an order of, usually if they default, it's because they maybe filed bankruptcy. This actually happened with General Motors. General Motors back in 2008, they went bankrupt. And the bondholders thought they were good. No, you weren't, because they didn't have the money to pay. But it didn't go without the investors knowing, because General Motors bond or their credit rating was already below